Scott Henry. He was the Fire and Life Safety Specialist from the Washington Township Fire Department, and he is going to be speaking about basic CPR and bleeding control, what you need to do between the time something happens and they get to you. So, all good stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. What are we going to do when something happens? As we call 911, ideally, if you're not by yourself, send somebody else to call 911. Have a really good idea of where you are, like an address. The dispatchers will talk to you. They're going to ask you some questions. You'll get to answer some questions. And the dispatchers here for the city of Centerville are actually just side of the lobby in the glass doors or glass windows over there. Something to remember is depending on where you are when you call 911, if we call from a cell phone, which I figure most people are going to, it's going to go in general to the sheriff's department in the county. And then they're going to transfer to where it specifically needs to go. Okay? Sheriff's Department Dispatch Center, which answers for an entire county, doesn't always know what business is located at which address. An address is very important. Google knows where I am at all times because I have that on my phone, Google Maps on my phone. The dispatchers, you got to tell them a good business name that they can then Google and figure out the address, a cross street, a street address. And honestly, this goes for you all when you're at home. When you call or you go to your friend's house, if I go to my buddy's house and we're having, it's a nice day. I think it's supposed to rain later, but a nice day. We go out and I go to my buddy's house and we're going to have a little campfire in his backyard, cook some hot dogs, drink some drinks, and enjoy ourselves at night. My buddy probably told me his address 20 years ago. And ever since then, I'm going over to Mike's house tonight, or I'm going to go see Todd, and I go to their house. If something happened when we're there, I'm going to have to run out front to look at his house number or look for a piece of mail to have an address, because the dispatchers aren't going to know until you tell them. They can eventually figure out what cell phone tower you're using, but you're not always super close to a cell phone tower. So knowing where you are, super important, especially for people who are working out and about, and part of your job is driving safely, as we talked about, but going throughout all these communities, you got to know where you are. And as we talk about the safety stuff, medical things, first aid, we really are talking about the first 5 minutes. This would be a totally different class if we were in, the Appalachian Mountains or out west in the Rockies, right? We're not talking about a rescue party that's going to come by a helicopter 90 minutes from now. When we call 911, the national average is about 6 minutes until help arrives. So we got a lot of fire stations down here on the south side of town, a little bit faster. Most of the communities down here on the south side of town work very well with their police and sheriff's departments. Police officers, sheriff deputies are always in their car, like driving around, out and about. So a lot of times they get places faster. The fire department, we, for the most part, will stay at the fire station and wait for people to call us. So it's going to take us a little bit longer. I would say on the south side of town, on average, a police officer is going to be there in 3 to 4 minutes. And a firefighter or an ambulance, fire engine or an ambulance will be there in 5 or 6 minutes. So this is like quick stuff that you're going to be doing. Rest assured, and I've been on both sides of that situation where I have called 911 and also when I have responded. And I will tell you 100%, when you call 911 and you're waiting for people to come find you or come help you, those 3 or 4 minutes seem like an hour because time slows down and you're in that panic. So hopefully, when you send somebody else to call 911 so we can deal with our person, that person can call 911, gives them their correct address, and if possible, send somebody out to the best entry point. You know, if we have a big building like this where there's plenty of exits and entrances, go to the one where the sick person is and open that door and wave. If you're in a neighborhood, I counted not too long ago, and on my street, from one end to the other, there are 28 houses on each side of the street. So I turn that corner, and in my ambulance, I can look for house numbers on all 28 of those houses to find the right house, or I could look for somebody waving me down or holding your cell phone up and shaking it so I can see the light. It speeds things up. And if you're at a big business, a hospital, a school, even a police department like this, if I start at the front door, and I'm guessing, I'm not super familiar with the insides of this building, but I'm going to guess between that front door, if I walk all the way around the building, there are at least 12 other outside doors. So if somebody is sick and needs help in the back of the building, it would make sense that we go to the back side of the building rather than the front door. It's a crappy time when you have to call 911. I totally understand. So try to remain as calm as you can, and we're going to talk about the basics today. For anybody here who is trained in CPR, either because they chose to or because it's required as part of the job, the full training of CPR and first aid takes about 4.5 hours. If we're going to do this in 40 minutes, we're just hitting the very important highlights of what we need to do. Just a couple definitions. CPR actually stands for cardiopulmonary resuscitation. That doesn't matter. There's a couple definitions that we use for words of cardiac arrest and heart attack. And I think a lot of people, and myself included, will sometimes use those words interchangeably, but they're different. When I have somebody who's laying on the ground, I'm not going to know if they're having a heart attack or if they're in cardiac arrest. We're going to treat what we see. The difference is everything that we're going to talk about with CPR when I get my AED out is going to help someone in cardiac arrest when their heart is not beating correctly. If someone has a heart attack and a blockage and cholesterol and everything's all clogged up, we can treat all the same symptoms and do CPR, but it doesn't have as high of a success rate without a surgeon going in and fixing things. And then the AED, which I mentioned, is this little blue bag here. The automated external defibrillator. If you watch the doctor shows on TV, that's the thing that shocks people. And these in our community and in many communities are all over the place. Down here in Centerville, Washington Township, we have a couple hundred of these just out and about. There's one actually on the other side of the lobby, over there on the wall. There's two at the library. There's one at the city building. There's two at that Kroger's down the street. We have some in our parks. They're around. And it's really on you to kind of pay attention to what you do in your normal life. Wherever you go, kind of pay attention to where those AEDs are, because literally we walk past them all the time. They're hanging on the wall at Kroger. They're hanging on the wall at Walmart, at Home Depot, at your kid's school. They're around. We don't notice them because at the time that I'm going to my kid's school, nobody's having cardiac arrest, and I don't need it, and I walk past it without ever thinking about it. But they're around, and they can very much save somebody's life. And when can this sort of stuff happen? I wish I could tell you. Right? What are the chances that somebody is going to go into cardiac arrest in the rest of your workplace today? I have no idea. But I know the odds are not zero. It can totally happen at any time. And if you're a betting person, there's no way that I ever would have thought that a professional athlete would have go into cardiac arrest on a professional football field. Right? There's no sound. I don't want to get in trouble with the commissioner and get sued. But I don't know if you saw this live a couple Monday nights or a couple years ago on Monday night, but I'm sure you probably saw it in replay. What are the chances that a professional athlete in amazing shape, 22, 23-ish years old, with dietitians and sports medicine specialists and doctors and health and all that stuff, would have had a cardiac arrest? Oh, no chance. But it happens, and we watched it. And happy ending in this case, again, we talk about chances. What are the chances that I would have thought that Damar Hamlin would play professional football again? I'd have said no way in heck, right? But he did. It worked. Everything that those guys did worked. It certainly didn't hurt the fact that he had a cardiac arrest, fell on a football field about 40 yards away from trained medical professionals who in the end zone had an ambulance waiting with a police escort to a cardiac hospital, one of the best in the country, that was about 3 miles away. Like, he had everything going for him, and it worked. So it can totally happen. And again, if it happens in the next 20, 30 minutes, there's an AED on the wall out there in the lobby. Don't use this one. That's for practice. So what we're going to talk about is the cardiac chain of survival, and it sounds really important. And I know the words are kind of faded out there, but it starts with the activation of emergency response system. And it actually starts with you finding somebody and then calling 911 and then starting CPR and then defibrillation, that AED, and then advanced resuscitation, which is the little picture of the ambulance. That's me and my friends. And then post-cardiac care at the hospital, and then recovery, either at the hospital or at home. So if we go through these, the majority of the work done when somebody is in cardiac arrest is by you guys. It's before the fire department gets there. It's before we get to the hospital. We just pick them up and do that advanced resuscitation. Maybe we'll put a tube in their throat, help them breathe. We'll put a bigger AED on in the back of the ambulance. But the whole first half of that process is you guys. So, and it can certainly happen. Like we saw that with Damar Hamlin. More than 350,000 out of hospital cardiac arrests. Like they're not counting the ones where people are at the hospital and this occurs. And the important stat there is currently bystanders only perform CPR 46% of the time. That's one of the, when I do my job, when we ride on the ambulance, that's one of the things that we track in all of our reports. There's just a little box. Was CPR in progress when emergency crews arrived? Yes or no? We track that. You can't go hardly anywhere in this or any community without finding people who know CPR. Right? Maybe they got trained at work one day. Maybe they were a lifeguard when they were in college, or I was a Cub Scout leader when my kids were little, or I'm a retired fireman someday. People know CPR. We just have to get them to help. And it's really easy. 2 steps. This actually used to be on if you guys know, the electronic billboard on State Route 35. So coming like from Xenia into the city, there's an electronic billboard. They used to have this on there from the Heart Association. It's really not hard. Call 911, push hard and fast in the center of the chest. And I brought my mannequin. We're going to do it in a little bit here. But I'm sure you probably all remember this picture from health class in middle school, right? All of the red and blue lines are your veins and arteries. We start right in the very middle with the heart, and that pushes the blood everywhere else throughout the body. And you know what? I just said one slide ago that it's pretty easy. It's not technical stuff like this. I don't care about circulating blood everywhere throughout the body. I care about circulating blood up to the brain. That's it. So we've got a little heart going here, and you can see it's beating and it's pushing the blood everywhere throughout the body. And you're going to start to see the heart, rather than beat, it's going to start to like quiver. The heart's still alive. It's not dead like at the morgue, but it's not beating. It's not pushing blood up to the important stuff here in your brain. And when we push on somebody's chest, it really it's like a hand pump or a siphon. It just pushes blood throughout the system. And absolutely, if I go back to that picture from health class, it goes everywhere throughout your whole body. And I don't care about any of that. Because if I'm in cardiac arrest laying on the floor, I don't really care that my left hand isn't getting blood. I care that my brain's not getting blood. And if I watch that, it's not that hard. And I figure, just to make it easier on you, we'll practice just at the end and do it all at once. But I can demonstrate it's pretty much exactly like that. I would call 911. I would give them my address. I would put my hands right in the center of this person's chest. And I would push. And it sounds weird because before I said it was a 4-hour-long class that we teach people to do this, but this is it. Okay, so it's not like super hard. It's going to be strenuous. It's a lot harder when it's a real person and not a plastic mannequin. But literally, you have your sternum, that big flat bone right in the center of your chest. And mine goes from here to here. And you want to put your hand right in the center of that bone. You don't want to be up at the top. You don't want to be down at the bottom, but like right in the center of your chest, and push. And that's CPR. If I go to an emergency call and somebody's in cardiac arrest, somebody has a heart attack, and I walk in and somebody is in the room doing that, not only am I ecstatic, but you've just also increased this person's chances of survival. From within that cardiac chain of event, cardiac steps to the cardiac chain of survival, we have a good foundation for those next steps. And that's it. Just keep doing that. If you get tired, if you get stressed out because that's my partner, that's my coworker, and I'm having a hard time with this, or if it's just really strenuous, it's a big dude, and I'm working really hard, I could call you up and say, hey, come over here on the other side of this guy and put your hands right where mine are and push. It's not super hard. And we just keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that until the police officers and the sheriff and the firefighters show up. The next step after that are these AEDs. And really, really, really pay attention to where these are. You might have one at your workplace. Maybe you don't. Not everybody does. They're not required. But they're a great tool to have. However, I guarantee you go places that have these. So pay attention, like churches and health clubs and schools and at the library and at city buildings and in police cruisers and just around. And as I said, we walk past them all the time without really noticing them because somebody's not having a cardiac arrest in front of us. And depending on where you live, depending on where you work, depending on where you go, you pass them by all the time. They're not everywhere, but they are around. And they're actually pretty easy to use too. We turn it on and follow the instructions. Turn it on and do what it says. And they're actually pretty easy. The only thing that we change from doing CPR to when this AED shows up is if we haven't, this person's shirt has to come off. If it's a lady, the bra needs to come off. And you'll see why in a second here. So get that done. And then as I said, we open this up. And I'm going to try to hold it up to the microphone so we can hear it a little bit. But we turn it on and do what it says.
Apply pads to patient's bare chest. Plug in pads connector next to flashing light.
Flashing light. These are the pads.
Apply pads. Plug in connector.
And he's very adamant. He's just going to keep saying this until I do it. I'm going to turn it off just so that it's quiet. In real life, turn it on. Don't turn it off. Do what it says. So yeah, we take the person's shirt off. If it is a lady, bra needs to come off. We take these pads, and in a real unit, they would be sealed up in a pouch. And there's generally two sets. There's a set for adult and a set for children. So we just pick the correct one. We open it up. They kind of make these super easy to use. Even firemen can use them. We don't need to know rights and lefts. We don't need to know where the heart or things are in your body. There's pictures with a big red arrow, and we just match. And we will end up putting them. That has an arrow for the right chest. This has an arrow, kind of the left, not the underarm, but like under the arm. And we will stick those on. And then follow the prompts, which are going to tell you don't touch the patient, and it's going to analyze their heart rate. So if I do the complete thing, I turn it on. Turn it on.
Apply pads to patient's bare chest. Plug in pads connector next to flashing light.
So pull these out of the package that they're in. They're real sticky. So I peel the backing off.
Plug in connector.
Put one right there. Peel this one off, and I match the picture, and it's going to go right there.
Apply pads. Plug in connector.
The connector plugs in next to that flashing light that it says.
Analyzing heart rhythm. Do not touch the patient.
Don't touch them. Like I said, do what it says.
Shock advised. Charging. Stay clear of patient.
So this is where on the doctor shows on TV,
Deliver shock
everybody
now.
clear, and they
Press
get
the
back.
orange button now.
And we'll push this button.
Shock delivered.
They really do jerk like that when you...
Begin CPR.
And then we restart CPR. And this even gives us a little metronome to kind of keep us on pace. And it's loud, so I'm going to turn it off. That's exactly what we want you to do. It's certainly not hard. You don't need to do it, like you don't even need to figure out right and left. We're matching pictures and making it look like that. If we think about where these electrodes are placed on the body, right chest, kind of left underarm, if we draw a line between those two, that's where this person's heart is. And we put that electricity through the heart, and it shocks them, and it's kind of like resetting your laptop. It just restarts the heart. And if you think back that video that I showed with the blood coursing through the body, a healthy heart is in your chest and beating. And when they're in that cardiac arrest, that heart is quivering. It's almost like hitting your funny bone. It's just tingling. It's not pumping blood through your body, but it's not totally dead like a body at the morgue or something. So it's spasming. We put that electricity through it, and it shocks the body, and they really do jerk like a good 8 inches or so. And what that does is it tenses up the muscles in your body, including your heart muscle, and tenses that up with the idea that when it relaxes, that it remembers that it's supposed to beat. And they're easy to use. They tell you what to do. They have pictures with big red arrows where to put the stickers. Some of the AEDs, depending on where you are in the community where you happen to be, some of the AEDs actually even have a little screen on them that instead of telling you what to do, it shows you a little video. So they cost a little bit more, but they're also fully functional for people who panic, for people who maybe English isn't their primary language or their best language, or maybe they don't know English at all. So like at an airport, at tourist places, at the Boonshoft Museum, they have one with a video. A lot of people go there. The Air Force Museum, I don't think all of theirs have the video screens, but some of them do. And again, you go to zoos, big amusement parks, Kings Island, they want them to be able to be used for everyone. And we'll come back, we'll practice at the end, but it's just important to, as I said, pay attention to where these are. These are there specifically for you to help somebody else before my friends and I get there. And if you think about the placement, as I said, there's one out in the lobby there on the other side of the room. And it's in a little cabinet on the wall to kind of protect it, but it's not locked. It's not behind the glass window where the dispatchers are. It's where anybody can get to it. We have 8, I believe, at your parks. Not at all the parks, but at Central Washington Park District, they have 8 of them that are out and about at parks that have a building with electricity, and they can be mounted to it, and they're there, and they're available for everybody, right? And they're in the same sort of cabinet. You have to open it up and use it, but they're not behind a locked door. They're there for everybody. And they're there for a reason, because they work. And then when we talk about bleeding control, that stuff that we were talking about with CPR, coursing blood throughout the body so that it goes up to the brain and keeps the brain healthy, that doesn't work if the blood comes out, right? We got to keep the blood in the body. And I know that it's very topical to talk about things like workplace shootings, acts of violence, school shootings, terrorist incidents, things like that. So that was down in the Oregon district, if you guys don't remember, from a few years ago. 100% these things apply to that. But they also apply in your normal life. I've used these paper cutters, and they scare the heck out of me. I've actually used some industrial ones like they have at like FedEx Kinko's that are like robotic machines that they wouldn't slow down at all if my arm was in there, let alone my finger. Those are crazy sharp machines, and we put them in elementary schools. And then, you know, what we're talking about workplace thing, and it's the chamber, and that's great, but every single one of us has a lawnmower or a shovel or an axe or a chainsaw or something in your garage, in your shed that can literally kill you. Right? And as he mentioned about, rollover safety with lawnmowers, yeah, I'm worried about lawnmower safety with rollovers, but I'm also worried about it's the rainy season, right? My yard needs cut. And when it's supposed to rain Saturday, so when I get out there on Sunday, my yard's going to be tall. And it's probably going to bog down my lawnmower. And at some point, it's going to bog it down and stop it. And I'm going to have to flip my lawnmower on the side and clear that out. And routinely, people will bog down their lawnmower, reach down to lift that thing up and flip it before the blades have stopped spinning around. And when you grab that lawnmower like that, it's a pretty clean cut of all 4 of your fingers. Or, windstorm knocks a tree down, got my axe, and I start hitting it, and I miss once, and swing it right down into my shin. Or just plain old run with scissors, or run with a pencil. Or, you know what, we can be safe, and we'll just trip. I'm not running, and I'm just walking with a pencil, and it can do some damage. And again, that very first slide or second slide that I talked about, we're talking about the first 5 minutes. So when we have bleeding, it's pretty easy to deal with. We're going to deal with pressure. And it's no different than if I go home tonight and I'm peeling potatoes in my kitchen sink and I slice my finger, I'm going to do the same thing that any one of you would do. And I'd drop the knife and grab my finger and go, ow. And when we have a big puncture, a big hole, a big laceration, we do that exact same thing, just on a bigger scale. Take something, a dish towel, a napkin, a t-shirt from the lost and found, whatever you have that's absorbent, and put it on the hole. And then push on it. And the more it bleeds, the harder we have to push. And we're trying to just effectively keep that blood in the body. And this is just a big old piece of material. It's not sterile, right? We're not talking about where help's not coming for hours. I just need something that's absorbent with a material on there. So we put it on and push. And if it's a small cut, if I'm walking through the woods and a tree branch comes and scratches my arm, I might just be able to put it on there and hold it. But if it's the running with a pencil and I trip and go in there, we're going to need some pressure on top of that. They actually there's a whole program called Stop the Bleed, which is a nationally known program that deals with this sort of stuff. And they make a really cool t-shirt. And one of these days I'm going to buy it because it says this t-shirt can save a life. And it literally is just teaching you to take that shirt off and use it in the place of this piece of material. Or something out of the lost and found. Or a sweatshirt. Or things like that. And if everybody had a good breakfast this morning, this is where we get just a little bit of the gross part. So I used a drawing diagram instead of graphic pictures. But I can take that piece of material, and if I put it on, and it's just not stopping, right? We've got a lot of damage inside. Unfortunately, what we get to do at that point, kind of what it shows in that top left picture there, we got to put some material inside. And then we kind of pack it, and I take all the rest of the material and put it up on top and put that same amount of pressure on there. And in that case, what it's doing is the damage that's inside the body has all that material packed inside. So when I put pressure on it, it's actually putting pressure on the internal organs and whatever's bleeding inside there, and not just the outside. So it certainly can happen. We don't always want it to, but it can happen. And depending on the workplace, depending on the work environment, you may have some things like this on the wall. So as I said, here at the police department, we have an AED on the wall out there. There are places that also have bleeding control kits on the wall. So machine shops, garden centers, places with sharp implements and toys and tools of destruction, they have these. You're seeing them in workplaces because they work. I will tell you that I work part-time on the side. I work for Warren County Career Center down in Lebanon, and I teach firefighter training there. We have these on the wall. In the front of the building, they have an 8-pack of those, a big case. Back of the building, another 8-pack. Are they there for a school shooting? They probably got funded because they're there for a school shooting. But it's a career, vocational, technical school. We have every program in that building that could hurt, kill, or maim someone. From mechanics to firefighting, heavy industry, welding, cooking. We have everything in there. Are those capable to be used in a school shooting? Absolutely. Are they capable to be used in everyday life when they're probably going to need them? Absolutely. Police officers here, and all police officers that I'm familiar with, will also carry a tourniquet on their person. Sometimes they carry 2. Vest, belt, somewhere, they're going to have one of these. And a tourniquet is kind of like the on-off. They keep theirs unwrapped already, so they don't have to do this part. But it's kind of the on-off switch for blood flow in your body. And these are usable on arms and legs, right? If I cut my head, I can't put a tourniquet around my neck. That's not going to work. Torso is always just pressure and packing stuff inside of the hole if we need to. Arms and legs are kind of harder to control. And what you have in arms and legs is, depending on how severely they're injured, you have a really big artery that goes in your crotch, and you have big ones that go in your armpits, okay? When we put a tourniquet on and bleeding doesn't stop any other way, I need the on-off switch. So when we put these on, if I injure my arm, I'm going to put this on my arm all the way up in my armpit. If I injure my leg, it's going all the way up in my crotch. And they're actually designed, if you can, to do it one-handed. I could put it on myself. And I could certainly use 2 hands and put it on someone else. But it goes on there. There's one little bit of color, this little red tab. And I'm going to grab that red tab and pull it as tight as I can. And it's on there. It's not going to fall off right now. But it has this little stick. And in this case, I'm going to start twisting this stick. And right now I can feel that it's on. And right now it's starting to hurt. But in real life, if I was bleeding, actually you can see my hands are turning color now. In real life, I would keep twisting this until the bleeding stops, until I turn the blood flow off. And then I would put that stick in this little plastic holder. It has a little Velcro tab so that it doesn't pop back out if I happen to move it. Can finish up with the rest of the little Velcro there. And I won't lie to you, these hurt. It's uncomfortable for me right now, but if I cranked it tight, it would hurt. But they also work. This is one brand, it's probably the most popular brand, and I'm gonna take it off because it does hurt. And if you have the time, you can write down with like a little marker or a pen, write down 918. For us, we like to loosen these up and let some blood flow about every 20 minutes. If you have time, if you have someone with a marker, if you have an extra person, write the time down. I'm gonna give or take, if I show up on an ambulance and use this, I'm gonna take it that you put this on within a minute or two of the time that you called 911. So I'm gonna kind of figure ballpark when you put that on. Not all brands of tourniquets have a spot for that, which is why it's important, but it's not the hugest deal that we have to mark that time. You know what, and you know, does everybody gonna carry a tourniquet around with them the way a police officer does? No. If you have a workplace environment where people could get hurt, could you have one or two at work in a first aid kit? Absolutely. If you don't, and I already said that police officers are gonna be coming within 3 or 4 minutes, they're bringing one. If they don't, when the fire department comes, we're bringing them. But I mean, this was designed recently as a result of military action in the global war on terror, right? They came up with this design. Some special operators designed this. I grew up watching John Wayne movies. I've seen him make a tourniquet with a bandana, a belt, and a stick, and he wouldn't even get off the horse, right? It's not new technology, right? I won't, but I could take my belt off and do the very same thing on my leg. So that's a store-bought thing that works easy and quick, but our goal is to turn the blood off. If I push hard enough, I can put my thumb here where my brachial artery is and shut the blood off that way. The important thing is I want to keep someone's blood in their body so that anything else that we do first aid-wise can work. And if they lose enough blood out of their body, and if you hurt a big artery in your upper arms or in your crotch area, you can lose enough blood to die before those 3 or 4 minutes for the police to respond. We'll get there. It's quick. So that's about the end, but I have enough time that I wanted to let me clean up my mess here. Because it's one thing to watch me do this. It's probably something else to watch one of your friends, neighbors, and coworkers up here and doing this. So does anybody want to volunteer, or should I pick on people? I could just grab another card. You sat right in front of me. Should you do that? Let this be a lesson to you. Do you want to come up here and give it a try? So what I want you to do is just what we would do in real life. Okay. Are you okay with this? I don't really want to make you do. Okay. In real life, as I said, you're not by yourself. Have somebody else call 911. Have somebody else run out into the lobby and grab the AED. You can start doing CPR, but you get to use and you can choose. You can use your mom voice or your drill instructor voice and tell people to call 911 and get me the first aid kit. And you get to pick whoever you're gonna have. I don't care. You don't have to, if this happens tonight and I'm in the cereal aisle at Kroger, I don't have to know you, but I'm gonna look at you and point at you and tell you in a voice that says, oh, I better do this, call 911, go up and get me the first aid kit, and I'm gonna stay here with this person. Okay. So you get to yell at people.
Yay. All right, call 911, give me your first aid kit.
And then you're going to start. Yep. And then don't call 911 for real, right? That's happened in a class of mine before, and I get in trouble for that. But she pointed at you, right? Yeah. Okay. Go that way. Go the long way. Make her do some work here. And absolutely, our focus is on CPR. But you're not leaving. But our focus changes that as soon as that AED shows up, it changes from CPR to that machine. So turn it on and do what it says. Turn it on and do what it says.
Apply pads to patient's bare chest. Plug in pads connector next to flashing light. Analyzing heart rhythm. Do not touch the patient.
Clear.
Absolutely.
Shock advised. Charging. Stay clear of patient.
Right, so this is where we...
Deliver shock now.
So somebody
Orange button.
has to push that orange button.
Shock delivered. Begin CPR.
All right, that's good. You don't have to do the whole thing. Keep doing that. You did great.
Thanks.
And that's what it comes down to. It's not hard at all, but it's a stressful situation. And that's why the machine is so amazing, because it tells you what to do. And then when it gets to the point of more CPR, it has the metronome, the beep, to keep the pace, because they know it's a stressful situation when it's not a plastic dummy, when it's a real person. It's even more stressful if you know them, friend, neighbor, coworker, something like that. So they want you to keep as calm and steady as they can, so they show it to you. Someone physically has to push that button for the simple reason that a human being needs to be there and look at this victim and look at the rescuers and say, okay, it's safe. I'm going to do that. Because that machine may not know if I'm catching my breath or saying, oh, buddy, please don't die. And it doesn't want to shock them. You always have to do that. So if we took an advanced class, we would still have mouth-to-mouth, and they would have devices to put on their face to protect people. But if we learned anything over the past 4-ish years with COVID, it's that people are dirty. And I don't want to do that. And there are exceptions, right? Close family members, my kids, my parents, right? I could still do that. But some dude on the sidewalk, I have no idea what his medical history is. Don't put yourself at risk. So yes, firefighters, police officers, doctors, nurses, the advanced level of care, they still do the not mouth to mouth, but mouth to the mask to ventilate. But what we found is it's just so much more important to, thinking of that video, push that blood up to the brain and keep pushing blood up to the brain and keep that. It's better in a medical setting if it's oxygenated blood, but blood to the brain is most important. So here's the deal, and it's kind of awkward when I say this. If this machine comes off the wall, it's because my victim's heart isn't beating, so they're dead. And is it the best case scenario? Is it rainbow time if I have a pregnant lady who's dead? No, I don't want to use this on a pregnant lady. I don't want to use it on a child. Honestly, I don't want to use it on anybody. But if their pregnant lady's heart isn't beating within a few more seconds, baby's heart isn't going to be beating. So we're going to use this AED regardless. And I don't mean to sound bad when I say this, but if I have a dead patient on the ground, I'm going to do everything I can to help them because you can't make it worse. I can't make them more dead. So is it the best case scenario? No. Is it the only scenario that you have at that time without surgically removing things? That's what we have, so we're going to have to do that. But those are wonderful, wonderful questions. One more, yes. If they have a pacemaker, you may or may not know that they have one. But if they're laying on the ground without a heartbeat, their pacemaker is not working. Ideally, I would not want to put this sticker right on top of a pacemaker. Generally, pacers are a little bit center or left oriented, but on occasion, they're over on this side. So maybe I would, if it happened to be on the right side, maybe I could move it over a little bit. And I don't want to put the pad right on top. But if they're deceased on the ground, no heartbeat, we're going to use this. Well, sometimes you'll know because you can see it. Sometimes you can see the scar. Sometimes you can see a little bump, a little bit smaller than a cassette tape. Not everybody knows how big a cassette tape is anymore, so I have to be careful when I say that.
I do.
Maybe you should use it like
Yeah, half an iPhone. But they'll have a little bump, and you'll see it. Sometimes you'll see a scar. You don't always see a scar. But ideally, we're just going to put it on and save people. And then the last thing that I will mention, and I appreciate nobody giving me a hard time about it, when I say when we have a female victim on the ground, we need to remove their bra. Because I have an electrode and an electrode, and it's not going to work well if I have a piece of wire that goes across there. That's why we take those off. So if you take that advanced class, it's 30 chest compressions and 2 breaths, with the rationale that a normal person, my heart's beating 80, 90 times a minute, and I'm taking 10 or 12 breaths a minute. So my heart's beating a whole lot more than I'm breathing. And that's what we want to replicate. But don't make it harder than it needs to be. If I scroll back to that picture of 2 simple steps, call 911 and push hard and fast in the center of your chest. And if you're doing this, I'll be ecstatic, and he has a pretty good chance of survival, which is what we want at the end of the day. So children will be the same. Infants are going to be totally different, and that's kind of in that class. And but again, I'll say that infants overall are pretty healthy. There are babies born every day with heart issues. But overall, if we're doing CPR, it's going to be on an adult and not a baby. So what I'll also say with that person who's calling 911, if you didn't pay attention to anything I said all day today, the dispatcher can walk you through and talk you through exactly what to do and be that calm, reassuring voice wherever you are. And 100%, this was like the very tip of the iceberg of everything. But really, if we focus on those first 5 minutes, we want to keep their blood in their body, and we want to keep blood in their brain. And that's what it comes down to. So I hope that everything that I just said today is totally useless and you never have to use any of that. But hopefully, if it ever does occur where you need something and something like this does happen, it'll flash back a little bit so that when the dispatcher tells it to you on the phone, you're like, oh yeah, center of the chest, and just keep going. And I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you for letting me come. So.